How's it going, everyone? It's Noir Tapes back with another video. In this video I wanted to get a bit crazy with drums. One of the best ways to increase your creativity and learn better sound selection is to try out different sounds, right? So today I want to get a bit experimental with my drums. I wanted to add a bunch of percussion and try out some different techniques, stuff like that. Normally I'm used to just using the MIDI in the drum rack and just dragging in kick, snare, hi-hat, maybe a little accent somewhere. I'm not usually too crazy with it. I like to keep my drums pretty simple, and most of the time that works just fine. Usually I make up for the more complex parts of the beat with samples and different little pieces melodically here and there. But today I want to do a bit of a deep dive into some of the sounds I have that are just sitting there that I've never used before and try them out and see what they sound like. I made a bit of a beat here. I didn't want to do it all on camera, it'd take too long, so I got a bit experimental before turning on the camera here, and I was just going to break down sort of what I did. Anyways, if we're looking at Ableton here, I've got a bit of a beat happening. I'll play it for you, and then I'll break down all the different layers that you hear. I think it sounds pretty good. I was vibing with it a bit. Check this out. Righto, so I'm going to break down the beat layer by layer and sort of break down my creative process a bit, and I'll break down the samples that are in it. As you can see, for starters, I decided to stay away from the drum rack. I could have easily gone into a drum rack and dragged all these sounds in and just have one track with all the MIDI in it. But I think this is a better way to look at it, and you can sort of look at the waveforms too when I expand them. And yeah, I just made it all in the arrangement view here. So the first thing I started with was actually a snare. I was just looking for a different snare, something I wouldn't normally pick. So I ended up with this snare here. It's actually a live snare from a real drum kit, but usually I wouldn't pick something like this. You can hear it's very raw, very real, no processing on it at all. Normally a lot of the snares I pick are quite gritty and heavily processed, so this is just a very natural, real snare. And so then I wanted to layer it with something. I don't layer my snares enough. I don't do it. It's a good idea to. You need to keep in mind it depends on the snare you pick though. If it feels like it's missing characteristics, then you should be layering it. But I don't layer my snares at all. I usually just pick one snare. I'm like, that sounds good. Call it a day. So this one I had to layer. I made that a goal. So this is what the layer sounds like. You can sort of hear the second layer has a bit of a tail, so it makes the whole thing sound a bit more full. So now I reach for a kick, kind of an interesting kick. It sort of sounds like a heartbeat. So I made this pattern to add with the snares. And so that was sounding pretty good, I thought. Nice little rhythm. It's all on the grid though, is the only problem I have with doing it in an arrangement view. You can't use the grooves. I'd have to move everything by hand. I'm not going to bother moving everything, but if I was making this into a full song, I would move everything and humanize it a little bit. But anyways, so we have a kick and two snares. So next I reach for hi-hats. This is a pretty normal workflow for me so far. This is the hi-hat I reach for here. Very gritty, very dirty. And normally I would fade the end a bit to make it a bit more smooth, but I wanted to keep it raw. That was the whole aim of this project, just to keep it all raw. So now I was going to lay out my hi-hat, which I don't do either. So this is the layer I added. I put more of these per bar, so they're a lot quicker, but I also automated the volume and the pan, so it comes in and up and down, left and right. So you hear it here. Just gives it a bit more drive, a bit more forward motion. And then next I went to my first perk. This is just a little accent before the snares. Sounds like kind of tribal. I like that. So then another sound I added was a little snap in between every couple of bars, just to add a bit of rhythm. Once I started looking for gaps to put in percussion, I noticed that there was a big gap in the middle where it was just the kick, the snare, and the hi-hat playing. There wasn't anything in between. I already had the perks on the start and the end of each 2 bars, so I was like, I need something in the middle. So the snap, just to come in, give it a little, bit of rhythm. And then the last thing I added to the drums in particular was the ride. This is probably the easiest one to add. You can put it just at the start of the drums, just to give it a bit more impact at the start. Or you can cut it short and use it sort of like an open hat before a snare or after a snare. But I just add it at the start. I use these sometimes. Not all the time. Not very often. But sometimes I do like using rides. But there you go, that's all the drums I went through. Tried to really branch out and try new sounds that I wouldn't normally grab and layer things and do it all in arrangement view because it's much more visual and easy to look at. And so then I had my drums and basically I figured I wasn't sure if I was going to turn this into a beat or just leave it as drums, but I decided, fuck it, let's make it into a beat. So I added the bass. These are live bass cuts. I just have the one cut that plays every bar, and then on the end of the 4th bar there's a bit of a rebound back to the start. And then I was just playing around with samples and I happened across this elegant sample and it sort of fit with the vibe. And after I put it on, I wasn't too sure at first, but after sitting with it for a bit, I love the way it sounds, and it sort of makes this beat all come together really nicely. So this is basically the final beat I ended up with. Wasn't sure if I was turning into a beat, I was just playing with the drums, but here we go. And yeah, it all came together rather nicely. I thought that sample really brings it all together. I think it sort of pushes the percussion to the sides a bit. You have the main samples, the focus, you got your drums keeping the rhythm, the bass at the bottom, and the percussion just is sort of there to be ear candy at that point. I love experimenting with things. Whether I save it or not, I don't know. It's like kind of cool, but it's much more of an experiment. Just branching out and trying things. So, but anyways, thank you for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.